Oh, sorry. Say, did you know that roughly 1 in 3 mouthfuls of food requires some kind of insect for pollination? That means that some bee, butterfly, beetle, or wasp is responsible for the food on your dinner table. In fact, there are over 400 species of bees in Ontario. Most of them you can find and support in your own backyard. My name is Aaron Fairweather, and I'm a graduate student at the Raine Lab at the University of Guelph. Here at the Raine Lab, we study all things pollinator. We study their diversity, natural history, and how they are responsible for the food on our dinner table, like this apple. While we can't be there in person to show you the amazing pollinator diversity of Guelph, I encourage you to go out and explore your backyard while enjoying this video. You'll find things like this common eastern bumblebee. You know she is a queen because she is so large and out early in the spring. Queen bumblebees are the only ones who survive the winter, and they only do so by hibernating underground. In the spring, the queen will emerge and immediately find food and start looking for a place to start her nest. Bumblebees like to nest often underground in old rodent burrows or in trees. Bumblebees are our most common social wild bee, and they can make colonies up to a couple hundred workers. Bumblebees are easy to spot in your backyard because they're usually large, fluffy, and loud. This is a leaf-cutting bee in the genus Megachile. Leaf-cutting bees are solitary bees, which means they do not live in hives like honeybees. Instead, each female bee will make her own nest and lay her own eggs. Leaf-cutting bees got their name because the females will harvest pieces of leaves to line the nests and protect their eggs. This bee found a place to lay her eggs in some old metal furniture and is making many trips to lay her eggs and make their leaf nests. Here's another one. When she visits this iris flower, she needs to crawl all the way in to get her food. This is an eastern carpenter bee in the genus Xylocopa. These big carpenter bees are most well known for making holes in wooden decks and patios as the solitary female bees make their nests and lay their eggs. But they are also very good pollinators. This female bee is showing off some fast dancing moves and quickly moves between dandelion flowers. If you have zucchini, squash, or pumpkins growing in your garden, keep an eye open for the squash bee. In Ontario, you can observe squash bees foraging on your squash flowers from mid-July to mid-September. Their thorax is covered in yellow hairs and their abdomen is black with light-colored bands. The males are easy to recognize since they have a yellow spot on their face that looks like a nose. Just like the vast majority of bees we have in Ontario, squash bees nest in the ground. They are solitary, and females feed their young exclusively with squash pollen. If you'd like to visit a squash bee in your backyard, you'll need to go out early since these bees are only active before noon. Lastly, sweat bees are tiny bees that may be green, brown, black, metallic, or even red in color. They commonly have yellow faces and their hind legs are quite hairy. During warm summer days, sweat bees frequently land on humans to lick the sweat that's on your skin. Sweat bees feed on flower nectar and pollen, but they also try to obtain salt from human sweat, like the athletes who drink sports beverages to supplement their diets. Sweat bees are quite docile and will very rarely sting. When they do, the sting is very mild compared to that of a honeybee or bumblebee, so you might not even notice it. Research is constantly on the go here. In fact, we've got a couple of graduate students in the lab here to talk to you about their research.
So we all love monarchs and we know that they need milkweed when they're caterpillars in order to eat the leaves and grow nice and big. And then as adults, the monarch butterflies also come back and drink the nectar out of the milkweed flowers. But what we don't know yet is how wild bees and honeybees react to having all of this milkweed in their habitat. So I'm studying the nectar in milkweed and whether it might be good at treating some bee diseases. And also I'm looking at what kinds of wild bees, because we have so many different kinds of wild bees in Ontario, what kinds of bees like milkweed.
Hi, my name is Sage, and I love all things bee. My research here with the Raine Lab is looking at some of our wild, solitary bees called cavity nesting bees. These include leaf-cutting and mason bees who make their homes in hollow tubes like plant stems or holes in your wall. There are over 100 types of these bees all across Canada. To learn more about what their favorite foods are and how they interact with their environment, I've teamed up with teachers and students all across Canada. They have installed these human-made homes called bee hotels. Cavity nesting bees will use these bee hotels to lay their eggs and leave them with food, pollen, and nectar. Once the bees have laid their eggs, I'll be using DNA barcoding to identify the types of bees that nested in my bee hotels and the flowers they used for food. I hope that this will help us learn what sorts of foods these bees like best so we can keep working to improve their habitat.
Hi everyone, and welcome to my summer workplace, a squash field. If you like pumpkins, squash, and melons as much as I do, then do you know you should thank for it? That's right, bees. But not just any bees, the squash bees. Unlike honeybees, squash bees nest in the ground and specialize in only collecting pollen from squash flowers. But since many growers spray their squash crops with pesticides, residues can accumulate in the pollen and nectar on which the bees are feeding and in the soil they are nesting in. Through my research, I'm looking at whether these contaminants affect the survival, behavior, and development of squash bees. To do so, I'm collecting female squash bees from local farms, and I'm introducing them in their new homes, experimental hoop houses in which plenty of squash are growing. I can then treat my plants with different pesticides and see how the bees respond to these treatments. If we want to continue enjoying the fruits and vegetables we like the most, then we have to protect the bees responsible for their production by making sure they are living in an environment that is safe for them. This is one of the motivations driving our research here at the Raine Lab.
Interested to know more? Follow the QR code on the screen and it'll take you to our lab's website. That'll give you access to other social media platforms we're on, as well as some information about other graduate students in the lab. Interested to know more about local pollinators and initiatives that are going on within Guelph? Check out pollinationguelph.ca. It's a great resource and it'll give you some tools that you can use to learn about pollinators in our city and how you might be able to support them in your own backyards. Also, check out the Bees of Toronto. It's an online PDF that you can use to identify the bees in your area. It's a great resource. Having trouble with the book? Consider iNaturalist. It's a free app on iOS and Android that allows you to take pictures of the insects you're seeing in your own backyard, and experts will help you identify those insects. In the description down below, you'll see a link to some coloring pages drawn by Dr. Liz Franklin. You can use those to color some of the bees that you see in your own backyard. We hope you've enjoyed this video. Be safe out there and be happy.